Thank you for having us. With me is Robert Schlenner, who's the operations director for my organization. Rob runs the day-to-day, manages all the technicians, manages our compliance person and process. So he's going to be doing part of the presentation with me. And we had thought maybe we would talk about auditing the cannabis industry and the amount of snacks that they are allowed to deduct, but Lisa advised that we should talk about cybersecurity because she didn't think Dan would, approve that topic. So we took Lisa's advice, and thank you, Lisa, for connecting us with this great organization so many years ago. Anyway, I digress. So the topic here is compliance and hackers and cybersecurity and phishing. And I wrote at the bottom, are you sick of hearing these terms? Because I know I am. I think everybody is. But it's a serious, serious subject. We're seeing all kinds of different hacks going on. And to be honest, the last one that we were involved with, nobody can figure out how it happened. The forensics team came in and they did an exhaustive audit, and it wasn't on the network. It wasn't in the email, so they're not sure how it even happened. But a lot came out of that audit, and it was amazing and eye-opening. One of the things that came out of it is how involved the IRS is now in the process of cybersecurity for your field. The IRS asked the accountant for his WISP, and they told him to update it and bolster it, which is pretty interesting. Luckily, he had one. The forensics team was asking questions, and I was leading the call. Rob wasn't available, and one of Rob's cybersecurity technicians was on the call with me. And one of the questions they asked was, do you have a firewall? And this was the initial interview. And we said, of course. And they said, is it up to date? And I thought that was very interesting. It sounds trite, but people buy firewalls. I have a firewall. It might be a piece of garbage firewall, but they never update it. They don't update themselves. So that was an interesting thing that came out of this audit. So we're learning that if you have the bare minimum, it's not nearly enough. And if you have what's recommended, it still might not be enough. So we're going to talk about detection and response to issues. So without further ado, we'll also take questions. If we say something that doesn't make sense or you have a specific question about it, we'll take a question about that. If you have general questions about cybersecurity or the WISP, please either save them for the end or see us at the table. All right? Thank you. Any intro comments, Rob, or are you good?
I think we're ready to rock and roll.
Ready to go. All right. So common attack vectors. So the slide is kind of self-explanatory, but I wanted to go through a couple. I want to go through weak passwords. All right. People are continually fighting us about, team 123 being a good password, or their mother's maiden name. And Rob's going to get into detail about that later. But your passwords are becoming more and more important. And we're going to go through some detailed analysis after about that. But that's a common attack vector, is a weak password, or a password that has been obtained by a dark web infiltration. So you shop at Target. You sign up online for Target.com. Target gets hacked. Your password is now available, right? And you don't know that. You may not get a letter from Target, or you may have missed it. But your password has now been sold to the dark web. It's in some cases published. So dark web monitoring is something that you probably want to ask us about or consider doing, so that you know that your passwords have been infiltrated and you need to change them, because a lot of people use the same password on multiple different sites. And that's a problem. Compromised credentials, same thing. Phishing. Rob's going to get into a phishing simulation for you. Everybody knows what phishing is, right? Okay. Misconfigured devices, devices that are not up to date, ransomware, poor encryption, malicious employees, or negligent employees. They don't even have to be malicious to do damage, is a big source of frustration for business owners and a big cause for hacks.
Thanks. What's important to see on these 10 common attack vectors is that 9 out of 10 of them are human related. They're not necessarily targeting your systems, they're targeting you and things you may have done wrong. Misconfigured devices, thinking that the other 5 PCs on our network aren't allowed to see your PC, which is the most important one with all your client data on it. And then one of your team members gets breached, something along those lines. So these 10 common attack vectors are, or at least 9 out of 10 of them, are looking directly to come after you and not necessarily just your systems.
Great point, Rob. Social engineering, which is huge, coming after you, as Rob said. It's huge. It's easy to trick people. They're really good at it. They're really creative. It's a psychological manipulation or a fraud, and it works. They scare you. They cause some urgency. You're busy during tax season. You know you have a deadline. You get an email that says a package is waiting. You click the link, you have a virus. Happens all the time. During the holidays, same thing. A package is waiting. You click the link, big mistake. If you expect a package, type in that number into Google. Do not click links in email. Type the number into Google. Google will find the carrier and give you an update on the package. Try to avoid clicking links in emails, especially from unknown senders. Even if it's UPS or FedEx, there's a lot of fraudulent emails out there from imitating those. One of 3 employees is likely to click on a suspicious link. Now, this brings up the need. How many of you have employees? I don't want to spend too much time on this. Okay. That's roughly 40%. Okay. The need for training. Somebody mentioned to me outside that CMIT started as a training organization back in 2004. And that's true. It was Computer Moms International, actually, CMIT. And we've now had to get back into the training mode. We now have adopted training for our clients and their employees because it's so important. And it has to be repetitive. The training is online. You have to read a paragraph or 2, answer some questions, read another paragraph, answer, because we need to train you enough to know what to look for and to be aware. We're not trying to sell fear, but we need you to be aware. So training has really become very important. So how did the hackers get your information? I already mentioned a target hack, right? But a lot of the information that comes to the hackers comes from you. Comes from your Facebook page, comes from your LinkedIn, comes from your out-of-office message. We're giving away way too much information. When you go through the training, you learn the things that you should be hiding. And Rob's going to get into a lot of detail about that, so I don't want to talk too much about that. Password reuse, big issue. Definitely need to be careful with your passwords. We've adopted a program to manage our passwords for us. At first when I saw it, I said, oh boy, my clients are going to hate this, but now I love it. It's amazing. It generates passwords for you. It stores them securely. You only have to remember one password to get into the program. It can actually launch a website, fill in the username, fill in the password, and then important, 2-factor authentication kicks in if the website allows it, and that's where you're able to know that you're the only one logging in.
This is a good slide for everybody. So I'm going to go into some detail here. The top number up there, 52% reuse the same password for multiple, but not all accounts. Why is that important? LinkedIn, 4 or 5 years ago, had a breach. Those passwords were encrypted but released to the internet, and anyone can decrypt them with a certain set of tools. Now, your username for LinkedIn, Rob Schlenner at CMIT Solutions is also your username for your Citibank account. R. Schlenner at CMIT Solutions. I use the same password on LinkedIn that I did for Citibank. It takes me about, 20 to 30 minutes to figure out who you are, where your business is, or perhaps where you live, and what are all the banks within a 10-mile radius of you. And I bet you that's going to be the bank you use. I try those credentials on that website. Next thing you know, I'm in your account, and all the money I can, I'm forwarding over to mine. So very important to not use the same passwords. Armando was talking about a password manager, and that's the answer to your question, well, how am I supposed to remember 500 different passwords, right? And we'll get into password manager in a second. But here's another very important piece. Guess what? Don't need to change your passwords anymore. That's old news now. It is actually about the length and complexity of your existing password. I love phrases. Phrases are a great way to remember very complicated passwords. Long lists. What did you have for breakfast that day? Black coffee and croissant, and then whatever numbers you want and some symbols. But it's kind of hard to see here at the very bottom. Number of characters, 12, with numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and symbols would take an AI algorithm 226 years to crack. If in year 226 you need to change your password, well, good on you. Hopefully, I don't know if anyone wants to go to 226. But yeah, it's super important. We're no longer changing passwords every 90 days, sir. So 13 digits with the same complexity I mentioned is going to be 15,000 years. 27 is not up there, but 18 is, and I don't really think we need to go above 18, but it's going to be 26 trillion years. And super simple to remember, I bet. So simple. I know. It's one of those things. You come up with these phrases. Armando, you want to go to the next slide? Because speaking of phrases, password managers. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, everyone hated two-factor authentication. It's such an inconvenience. It slows me down, this and that. And now 2FA, not only is it mandatory, it's not that bad, right? We get it done. We get that text message. We move in. Maybe we get the alert on our phone. We press OK. We're ready to go. It's not that bad anymore. Password managers is that next thing. I'm giving you a heads up now so you can get ahead of the curve. Password manager, I advise a paid one. There are free ones out there, but you get what you pay for type of deal. That complex 20-character phrase that's in your head, that is your key to get into your password manager where all your other credentials are saved and they're randomized for you. You don't have to create passwords anymore. Let the technology do that for you.
Yeah, and as far as the phrase goes, don't make it anything too common. Years ago, before we had all these password managers, we used to talk about if somebody got in your cubicle at work or your office at work, they could figure out your password in 10 minutes. Why? You have pictures of your kids, your cat, your dog, the name. We had one woman who said, I'm getting suspicious emails, and Rob ran a dark web search, and it came back and her password was Bosco41. And I had a dog named Bosco. So I called her up and I said, hey, you had a dog named Bosco too? You still have him? She goes, how'd you know that? I said, everybody on the dark web knows it. Your password is out there now. So again, too simple, too easy. Bosco's on her Facebook page. It's just too easy. And it doesn't take them very long to guess that when they start to gather information about you. And they literally gather information about you. They build a profile. Attachments. If you get an email from anybody with an attachment and you open it, you're taking a huge risk. Attachments are usually, or in the old days, it was mostly the attachments where the payload of the virus was, okay? So please be very, very cautious with attachments. We tell people all the time, just pick up the phone. Nobody picks up the phone anymore, okay? You get an attachment from somebody, you're not sure what they sent you, you need to call them and ask them, did you send me something? They may say no. So you know a spoof, a phishing attack, or they have a virus. And now they're spreading the virus unknowingly to other people who click that attachment. Very, very important.
A secondary piece about attachments is they're pretty difficult to deal with Traditional antivirus works in a way of, here's a list of 3,000 known bad extensions for files. If it's not in that 3,000 list, your traditional antivirus is not going to pick it up. We're not going to be discussing extended detection response. Please come over to the table if you have a question about what that is. But this is a way more robust AI-driven learning tool that identifies what happens when you open that Excel workbook. And at 2 in the morning, that Excel workbook all of a sudden makes a connection to a remote IP in Russia, the Philippines, or something like that, and starts transferring data. XDR, or Extended Detection and Response, will say, hey, I don't think you're supposed to be doing that, and bring your machine off the network. So in regards to attachments, the technology needed to defend against them is above your traditional antivirus. I would encourage you to talk to your technology provider or whoever runs the technology on your team and say, how do we protect against this new revelation in malicious actors?
Getting back to the passphrase that you choose for, let's say, your Keeper program or you start to use as your main password shouldn't make sense, okay? I love the Beatles. The dog ate the oil in my car. Makes no sense whatsoever. Put caps at the end of each word or anywhere you want, as long as you remember where you put them, and put a number and a symbol at the end. The government is now recommending that you don't have to change your password, like Rob said, every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, as long as you have a good phrase. Minimum 12, Rob? 15 recommended?
Yeah, 12 is the
minimum 12, okay.
So now we get into some fun things. I don't know if you guys use Facebook or LinkedIn or MySpace, which may be a little too old, but create your rap name, right? So I want everyone to take a second to put the word young in front of their first pet's name and then their mother's maiden name, right? So that's what your rap name would be. Does anyone want to tell me what theirs is? You don't have a pet? Okay, none. There you go. That's fine. Good question. If you don't have a pet, none. Okay? You don't have to say it out loud before you do it. So Facebook, LinkedIn, there's constantly people posting questions along the line of this. And what people don't realize, this is Citibank's "Can I help you remember your security password?" hint list. They ask you 6 different questions that you have an option to choose which one you want to use to get into your Citibank account if you forgot your password. 2 out of the top 6, your first pet's name and your mother's maiden name. What I'm trying to prove here is that when you're on the internet and you're participating in the World Wide Web, not everything you see is people acting in good faith. That rap name thing, I saw 500 inside of a Facebook post, and I was mortified, thinking to myself, these people don't know. They just gave up all this information. So when you are opening a Facebook account or whatever it may be, any social media or wherever you're communicating with other people on the web, think about what you're putting on there. What's a rap name for? I didn't see where that question came from. I love it. Oh, back here. A rap name is like a rapper, a singer. There you go. Okay, so the point of the rap name, right? People post it on social media. Hey, create your rap name. And then you would theoretically say, hey, this is mine. How funny is this? And secretly, you're actually giving me 2 out of your 6 passcodes to get into an account.
Yeah, and mother's maiden name also. So when I started to learn about this stuff, I went back to my wife. I said, we need to call Citibank and change the name. Our challenge response was mother's maiden name. And she said, why? I said, look at your Facebook page. It's there. It's out there. It's too easy to get. And, you know, the government was hacked and the social security numbers are out there and your address is easy to get. It's too easy to build a profile nowadays. So the only thing we have is either 2-factor authentication or challenge questions, okay? And the more important the website, the more difficult that should be. It should not be mother's maiden name. Anybody, you don't have to raise your hand, anybody that has mother's maiden name on an important website like your bank, you need to change it, make up a name. If you never had a pet, make up a fake dog name. Or make up any name you want, a weird word. something you're going to remember and whoever else participates in that account's going to remember. What's that? There you go. No pet. That's your challenge response. And the bank will ask you, that still. And unfortunately, the bank will not allow you to put special characters in your password. So you can't even use a complicated password. And because their systems can't handle it, which makes your password less secure and makes challenge responses more important. Everything you share can and will be used against you. As Rob was saying about Facebook, Facebook is very dangerous. My wife said, oh, look at this. Somebody's doing a survey and they're asking these questions. It's really funny. I said, please don't answer. All they're doing is gathering information and trying to get information out of you to create a database on all these people. Please don't participate in that stuff. Lock down whatever you can with two-factor authentication. Think twice about what you share online. Educate yourself. As I said, Rob's going to talk a little bit about a training program that we use to educate our employees and we use to educate our clients.
So who here does cyber training right now? Okay, and how many of those people are receiving phishing emails? There we go, got one in the back. So phishing emails, or receiving them into your mailbox, is a very popular way to do training. I hate it. I think it's ridiculous because it's not teaching you anything besides to be cautious, which is kind of good, but it does not teach you anything. So we do a more proactive training or a positive reinforcement model where we teach people this is what you should be looking for in malicious emails, or this is what you should know about this topic. So it's way more robust. I would highly encourage you to look for a positive reinforcement model of training because not only does it affect you at work, it affects you at home on your Gmail, or affects your end users, your team members who go home and they open up an email on their personal account. They're like, oh, you know what? I know what to look for to make this a good or a bad email potentially. And even if you save them once, it's worth it because having to go through a cyber breach is very painful, financially and mentally. It will take a toll.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, so the training that we recommend has you read a little bit, ask your questions. Once a month, you have to pass a test with at least 80. If you don't get 80% on the test, you have to reread and answer a second group of questions. And it's really amazing how in-depth the hackers are and how clever they are. And it's amazing how the training has captured that. Thanks.
Last piece on the importance of training. If you are a business owner who has multiple people working for you, this will identify those weak links, right? The weakest part of any cybersecurity plan are the employees, and if you have one team member who can never pass a phishing exam or clicks on every bad email that comes to them, that's a big issue, and it will advise you to that and allow you to potentially make a change. So when you're receiving an email, there's seven different things to look for. The very first is going to be the sender. This sender is coming from Gusto. To the layman, maybe it looks totally normal to receive an email from this individual. However, what I would advise is that you hover your mouse over the sender name, and it's going to be hard for the people in the back based off of the numbers not being able to see them. But what you can see there is no-reply at gust0.services.com. Well, that certainly looks like Gusto, but it isn't Gusto because a 0 and an O are two separate things. So this is actually a bad sender, and that is often how they'll trick you with a sender. For the people with bad eyes, similar to myself, the word Amazon and the word ARNZON look very similar. It is hard to tell the difference between those two things on your screen as you're going through emails and stuff like that. And that's just one way to make an M or make R and N look like an M. Very dangerous, very sneaky. I've seen some great ones. A capital I and a lowercase l are the same exact symbol basically on a computer. Very easy to trick you there. They will do all sorts of things to get you good. So that first one, no good. All in favor of that? Excellent. Okay, great. Subject, part 2. Raise confirmation, confirm ASAP. Suspicious? Not? All in favor of suspicious? Suspicious, excuse me. There we go. Yes, tough one. Correct. And here's why. Urgency. That's how they try to get you. They want to scare you into making a decision right away. And it's one of those phishing or social engineering tactics that allows for people to scare you into making the wrong decision. Now we're getting into the body of the email. Valued Gusto user. Safe, unsafe, unsafe. I like it, yes. Sir, madame, valued customer. If you have an account with Gusto, I'm putting big bucks saying that they got your name, right? Whoever Gusto is, I'm not really sure. But they most likely know at a bare minimum your username for that account. And a generic address to you is often a sign that, hey, this may be a malicious. Continued in the body, punctuation matters. Okay? Quite simple. We need, assistance from you to confirming payrolls. It's even hard for me to read, to be honest, because it's so confusing. We need assistance from you to confirming payrolls, confirmation information for UR recent pay raise. Seems cut and dry. I get it. I know it's funny to look at. It can be one simple misspelled word or use of a word in an email. That is the only indicator to me or my team or yourself, maybe this didn't come from Citibank. So that one, I think we're all going to agree, not good. So once again, continued in the body, does the text here appear safe, common, informative, or suspicious, urgent, or emotionally charged? ASAP, right? Doesn't really work in the email world. You're not getting emails from legitimate sources saying, ASAP, pay this. Perhaps payment reminder, I've seen that, that makes sense. But ASAP is rushing you to make a decision. You need to click this now to get this resolved. They're pressing you, they're working on your emotion to get you to make a mistake. Essentially, the urgency here leads to the fear of missing out. Whether it's scaring you or, hey, limited time offer, click this ASAP, there's only 5 remaining. That's another way they'll try to get at you to steal whatever credentials you may have. The embedded links within an email. Log into Gusto. Looks good from a visual perspective, but when we hover over it, we will notice, for those in the back who may not be able to see, GUST0-services.com. Looks like Gusto. You hover over it quick, not paying attention. That looks good. You click that link. It takes you to a site, and it will look just like Gusto. You enter your credentials. They're recorded in some back-end server somewhere of a malicious actor, and then they push you through to the actual Gusto page. And you have no clue that you just did it. And you continue on with your day. Nothing's wrong. Weeks later, tax returns have been filed for your clients. And you say, I didn't do that. What's that about? And you're calling us to begin the breach process. Very unenjoyable. I hate those phone calls. So to review the 7 indicators, sender. Hover over, take a good look. Subject, is it urgent? Does something seem off? The greeting, valued member. Spelling, punctuation, and grammar, always important. These are big businesses or even personal connections to people. You'll kind of know how they speak on a day-to-day basis, and some of the verbiage is not always there. Is it urgent or emotionally charged? External links. And the 7th piece that we discussed earlier, those attachments. Am I expecting this attachment?
So one of the only advantages I still have over this guy is that I've been around a long time, and I've seen so many of these that I have some anecdotes that I like to share, some little stories. So he's covered all the points. These are great points. How does it manifest? Okay. Woman named Fran, I won't use last names, gets an email. I need you to change this quickly. Payday is tomorrow. I have a new bank. The guy's sitting in the next office. She changes it. Payroll company calls Fran. What are you changing the bank for? And she said, well, he sent me an email. She said, did you ask him? And she said, no. She went next door, and it wasn't him. Now, there's 2 kinds of phishing. There's 2 kinds of spoofed emails. As Rob said in one of the things, look at the name. So did it come from Armando, a.decordo@cmitsolutions.com? The label in front of the name means nothing. That can be altered, okay? If it says Armando Diacordo and in parentheses it says, I'm going to rip you off at gmail.com, it's not from Armando Diacordo. And that happens all the time. I got a notice the other day from Netflix, and the email address was not Netflix. It was some guy on Gmail. Those are the amateurs. The good ones will have a telltale sign somewhere else, but the name will be a.decordo@cmitsolutions, and I didn't send it. Or they've hacked me, and they're working out of my sent items. They send an email, they delete it. I don't know what's going on. You get an email that's legit. You click on it, you look at it. It's really from Armando. I better trust this. So that's one thing. Remember what I said earlier, pick up the phone. Fran should have picked up the phone or walked next door and said, did you change your bank? I just want to make sure before I do something this important. Urgency. We have a client named Joe who's quite honestly mean. He's just a hard-driving businessman, and he's kind of rude at work sometimes. He's rude with us, he's rude with his employees. When he gets an email that he doesn't like or an invoice he doesn't feel like paying, he sends it to his vice president. What is this crap? Right? And she clicks the link and gets a ransomware virus. Locks down the whole server, her machine, everything's encrypted. Only way to get out of that is to pay the ransom, or if you have great backups and a great IT team, we rebuilt her machine and we restored from backup, and she was up and running in 2 hours. 2 weeks later, she did it again. Again, this is the urgency. And the culture there, the urgent email, what did you call it? Creating an emotionally charged, coming from her boss, and when we look close, it wasn't. The name was slightly off. It was fake. It didn't come from a boss, but it said her boss's name in the email. It looked like it was real, right? In that environment, that was one that she was going to fall for. She wasn't going to fall for the other stuff. She's very smart, but she didn't want to get yelled at by the boss, so she jumped on it. Second time, we didn't charge her to restore her machine and the server because we felt that bad for her. But it's a lot of work, and it could have been worse. This was a couple of years ago. Now, they could lock down the whole network. They're stealing information. Sometimes you don't even know that you've let them in, and they're stealing information on the back end. So it's even worse now than it was with the ransomware. Rob has a statistic with that I don't even try to repeat, but it's the third largest economy in the world is hacking.
Yeah, third largest GDP is malicious actors. USA, China, malicious actors, which is great because if we ever go out of business, I know what I'm doing. But it's incredible, the amount of money being extorted from people just to get their QuickBooks file back. Otherwise, their whole business, the last 20 years of their life that they didn't back up, is gone. And what are you going to do? What bills do you send? Another important piece, QuickBooks backup file makes me think of backups in general. If you are not backing up your data, shame on you. A key reader to access your machine? Something's better than nothing, right? Two-factor authentication is kind of what you're asking about here. There's 3 different methods for it. There's SMS, that's a text message. There's an application, you download an app, and then you can look at the code on, correct, you need the authenticator app. And the third one is a key fob. Every level comes with a security benefit and a convenience charge, I call it, right? SMS, super convenient, very easy to break, the easiest form of two-factor authentication to break. The authenticator, my preferred method, if it's being managed by either yourself or some sort of professional who knows what to look for in the application, is the most convenient and secure way. It's much more difficult for malicious actors to breach the application itself. And the absolute best, the most inconvenient, is that key fob. Because if you forget your keys at home and you just drove 2.5 hours into Brooklyn, sorry, you're going to either have to call the IT people to have them, bypass your 2FA for the day, which maybe they won't even do, or you're really up the creek. So to answer your question, my preference is, well, what's your risk you're willing to take with the security and convenience?
Yeah, so it's risk, reward, and convenience, right? We've had people tell us, well, they don't have a cell phone, they can't use, we use Duo as an application. So Rob got them key fobs. So they get the number, they get their two-factor on a key fob. You also have to look at the risk of doing it. The risk of not doing it is not worth taking. You have to do something. What's the risk of doing it? What's my fallback? So we say two-factor authentication, and somebody goes out and gets a free authenticator from Google. Don't use anything free, folks. Take it from me, please. Don't use anything free. I know budgets are tight. I know the economy's a mess right now. Inflation is rampant. If you're going to spend anywhere, spend on security. Don't use anything free. There's 2 free authenticators out there from huge companies. And I don't want to get sued, so I usually don't say their names. But Microsoft and Google might sue me, so I can't say their names. There's 2 free authenticators out there. You can Google to find out which ones are out there that are free. And they've both been hacked. And worse than that, even if they weren't hacked, who are you going to call if you have a problem? Bill Gates? Mr. Google? Right? Ghostbusters. That's who you're going to call. If you have trouble with that app or it goes bluey on you and you can't use it and it stops working, who are you going to call? If you have an IT professional, get a managed app through them so they have a back way in to help you if you have a problem, to reset your user ID, to resend your credentials and start over. It's we read something about the IRS earlier. The last line in the whole, I don't know, it was 45, 57. It was one of the publications that we were reading to prepare for another conference in a couple of weeks. And it said, we highly encourage you to use a professional technology firm and not do technology on your own. That was from the IRS. He sends me a note. They said it, not us. It's that important that you don't use anything free. Free Avast, no, it's okay. Paid Avast is better. Of course it's better. They're putting more money into it. You're giving them money to put into a better product.
Questions?
Yeah, let's take questions now. They could read the slides at any point. So, all right, let's start with some general questions. Yes, in the back. We talked about it last week. I think I have it with one. I don't think I have it with all 3. Lock down your Social Security. If you apply for a credit card, you can easily unlock it, get the credit card approval, and then move on. But you need to lock down all 3 because no matter what you do, and when we speak in a couple of weeks, actually, we're admitting that prevention, detection, response is the way that we're forming our IT strategy now. And the response has become more important because we cannot prevent everything. Any IT person that tells you they can prevent everything is lying to you. We cannot. We can't control every click that you make, every decision you make, every email you read. We can't prevent what goes on outside of your control. The dentist, the doctor, they have all your information. The tax preparer. Tax preparer gets hacked, and 200, 300, 400 people, all their information's out there. The response is really important. So the IRS now, for all major industries that are highly regulated, you need a WISP. You need a disaster recovery plan. You need a business continuity plan. You need an incident response plan. That's new. Create an ID for me. But the problem is the Social Security system got hacked, so they're all out there too. So without passwords, two-factor authentication, and good practices and lockdown Social Security numbers, we're in trouble. Yes.
First off, everyone in here, including myself and Armando, are on the dark web, and I would bet 90% of us have our Social Security numbers out there. It's just who's willing to pay for it is the question. No, you can't get off the dark web. However, you can put steps in place to remediate the issues that are currently existing, the passwords, social security number. Armando says 3 agencies. I think there may actually be 5 that you could use to lock them out of. And then put roadblocks. Layered approach is how we do our security, right? You should have roadblocks. Armando said no one can protect you 100%. That's the only thing that's 100% true. Roadblocks will eventually, someone will bump into it. And when they bump into it, then you're able to react. It's all about reaction time, instant mitigation, being alerted as soon as possible. So you can't get off the dark web, but you can get a password manager and put all your passwords in there, and that password manager is going to say, hey, listen, these 10 passwords, they're everywhere. You need to get these changed. And then you'll know which passwords you need to change. And then, hey, you've reused this password too many times. And then you'll know, okay, these are the websites I have to go to make those changes. My mom does not believe in technology. All her passwords she writes down in a book.
You can't control the dark web, but if you're out there and you know that Target was hacked and I have a second email address that I use for those types of websites, not my work email address. If I see that Yahoo address out there, even if it doesn't show me what the password is, I'm going to change that password. Okay, so it's real important not to reuse your passwords. Let a keeper type program, LastPass Keeper, whatever you choose a password for you. Yes? Lock them down because, like I said, Social Security was breached. The Social Security Administration was breached. So all the Social Security numbers are out there. And AT&T was recently breached. So somebody's got my social. I'm getting text messages that are fake literally twice a day because they have captured everybody's SMS info, and they're sending targeted phishing attacks via SMS now, via text. So if you have AT&T, don't click on any attachments or any links. Even if it says you have an update for UPS, it might not be UPS. Yes? There's a Facebook security administrator that can remove that account for you. You have to prove that you're you, show them what the real account is, and have them remove the fake account. Jeopardy is somebody can impersonate you, put malicious links out there, use AOL Instant Messenger to impersonate you, and go after your friends. That's a dangerous thing. You need to act on that quickly. It also affects your online reputation too. We pride ourselves on doing the best we can, but we do go home sometimes. He'll work 80 hours a week, but there's times where he's home with his daughter and his wife. So the SOC doesn't sleep. They have 3 8-hour shifts, so people stay fresh. They are watching the alerts, and they're watching for behaviors. So as Rob said earlier, if your machine suddenly at 3 in the morning is transferring a bunch of data, even from the machine to the server, the AI is going to alert the SOC, and the SOC technician is going to stop the process, or the AI will pull that machine off the network. Now, we have a crazy client named Colleen, love her to death, very smart woman. She's always meddling on the server, and yeah, it was me. I was moving files so I could reorganize in folders and put them back on the server, but the SOC doesn't know that. And we're glad, and she's glad that they stopped her, because that's what hackers do. They try to gather data, get it onto one machine, and upload it from that machine to the web in increments, so they're not detected by the firewall. So that's called, what do you call it? Unusual. Yeah. There's a word. There's a term for it. So, but it's not what's normally happening, right? So if they see behavior on the network or on your machine that's not typical, they will flag it. So there's no virus detected. They're looking at movement of data as a atypical action that people normally don't do, hackers normally do. And that's what the SOC SIM does. SIM is the 400 days of logs, or at least 1 year of logs. If you get breached, they're going to ask you for your firewall logs. and your Windows logs. And if you don't have those, that's another, it could invalidate your cyber insurance. It doesn't give them any forensics to go on. So that's what the SIM is. It's logging of data.
And if it in any way invalidates your WISP, then your cyber insurance will not pay out during a cyber incident. So it's very important to do what you're saying you're doing when you write up your WISP. Hey, I have two-factor authentication on. Well, you better have that on. It better be updated all the time. Hey, I do critical updates once a week. Well, if it's 2 weeks by and a malicious attack happens on your network and they find out that you didn't do that update, the critical update you said you did every week, your claim's out the window. And now you're, I don't know, $30,000 to $100,000 in the hole and losing all that credibility with your clients.
Yeah, we've seen the lawyers at $5.25 an hour, cyber lawyer, for breaches. We've seen the forensics teams between $3.50 and $4.25 an hour. And they come in and you can't tell them how many hours to work. You can't negotiate the price. They have to do their job, and the Attorney General has to get their reports. And the IRS is now getting involved and asking questions. Let me see your WISP. You need to they told one guy recently, you need to bolster your WISP. You need to bolster what's in it, not just the way it's written. So the IRS really has a hands-on approach here because they understand how important this is. Well, if you don't click any links and you don't go on any websites recommended by that email and you delete the email, then nothing's happened. But if you click a link and you don't see anything happened and you think you're okay, have somebody check your machine because you're not okay. They sent you to that link for some reason. They gathered something. Like Rob said earlier, when you put something in, they may gather your information and then redirect you to the real website, and you think, okay, here we are. And you actually put your credentials into a phishing site and were redirected to the real website, and they have your data now. And the last thing I'll say before we take more questions, most companies will not ask you for anything. We have a friend, Bill, who we love, who falls for this stuff all the time. And MSN asked me to validate my security, asked me for all this. He said, I put it in and then I kind of felt like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, you shouldn't have done that, Bill. We need to change everything. We need to scan your machines. So he literally gave MSN, and it wasn't MSN, his MSN password. So, again, it's easy to fall for these things. You have to be really diligent. We're here. Thank you. We're available for further questions, and we'll be here in the morning also. Thank you.